Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to be starting the presentation very shortly. Just for transparency, we are recording the session. Just so that you are aware, we will be distributing the recording afterwards. While we are just waiting for last delegates to join, I will do introduction shortly. We just wanted to welcome you so long to the session. Thank you so much for your time. And we wanted to just hear from you before we officially get going. We wanted to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the changes in equity legislation? As you know, today's topic is all about compliance, equity, and what's changing. So you'll notice that on the screen share, there is a QR code. If you scan that QR code, you can give us your responses. It's a free text field. You can type up to 3 responses. And we just want to hear a bit about what your thoughts are on the legislation, just to engage with you a bit before we start the official presentation and introduce you to everyone. So as we're still waiting for delegates to join, what are your thoughts on the changes in equity legislation? So it's a good platform to hear from each other. Do you agree with the legislation changes? Do you feel that it's unnecessary? Are you sure what it means? Do you have questions about it? How do you feel about how the changes were rolled out and communicated? Any sort of responses? We're just interested to hear from you. We have 2 questions. This is the first one. So you're welcome to scan the QR code and type your responses. We're just going to give a few more minutes for everyone to join and get settled. We have a few responses coming up. Okay, so Linnell, we have some responses. Interesting, ridiculous, quite a strong one there. Fairness, we have another response that says they agree with the rationale. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about those responses? Does it sound familiar, like any of your other clients you've heard of?
Definitely familiar. So there's always mixed emotions when legislation changes. So I think this is a fair representation of what a lot of people are feeling right now.
Yeah. With any change, probably comes a bit of uncertainty and Tanya,
I'm
thanks so
glad that
much.
I'm glad that someone agrees with the rationale.
Okay, that's a quite interesting one. We have another response, confusing. Not sure, maybe a bit of uncertainty. It's still relatively new, these changes. I think we're all still trying to make sense of it. Hopefully by the end of today, we'll be more sure.
Definitely.
Hey, some interesting responses. Tanya, thanks so much for popping your question or your comment in the chat. Tanya says she's not able to use her cell, but she is here and engaging with us. Thanks, Tanya. It's nice to have you on the call. Okay, so again, we're still going to do nice introductions for you. We're just giving everyone a few minutes to get settled. Any last responses before we move on to the second question? I think it's quite a mixed bag of responses, Renal.
Definitely. And that's how people are feeling about the legislation. Some are ready for it, some are not. It just depends.
Yeah. I think I'm going to move to the next question we have. You can remain on the same page. The next question we just have for you, just to kind of gauge where our delegates are at this morning, is how prepared are you feeling to implement these changes in equity legislation? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 meaning you are feeling totally unprepared, you're unsure, you don't really know you're not quite there yet. 10 meaning you are completely ready for it. You have done your prep work or in the process of doing your prep work. Um, just for interest's sake, the responses there that you see is a summary of all of the responses. So it's not one specific response coming up, it's a summary of all of the responses. So we can see at the moment we're at a 3.5, 3.6. So Lanelle seems like we're more towards feeling still a bit unprepared, not quite sure yet. Like you said, it's quite new. So it looks like you have your work cut out for you in this session today.
I do, I do. I'm hoping that number can increase by the time we're done.
Yes, yes, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. I don't want to take too much of our time just with this slide. It was just to gauge kind of where we at. So Linnell, if you can put up the presentation slides for us, then we can continue. So again, welcome everyone. I see we have about almost 50 participants on the call. So thank you so much for joining our session. Hopefully you have a cup of coffee with you or your early lunch, and you can sit back and relax and enjoy the session with us. So the topic for today is Let's Talk HR. And we're going to chat the chat will be all about compliance, equity, and what's changing. We will also be touching on skills. We know skill submissions, of course, are coming up very briefly, but the focus for today really is going to be on equity and the legislation changes there. So before we get going with introducing our presenters, I just want to mention that today, of course, the HR webinar is being presented by P&H Solutions, and we have a few of our colleagues on the call here to support, but it's Linnell will be presenting the session for us. We also have Annemin Victor on the call, who I will hand over shortly. Just to introduce myself, my name is Helena Nell. I'm a senior HR consultant and industrial psychologist at P&H. Yeah, we are all very excited to have you on the call with us today. So maybe you've seen the webinar today. Maybe you're interested in the topic, but maybe you've never heard about P&H Solutions and who we are. So just to introduce us as a company, I want to just include Annemin Victor, who is our services director at P&H, just to give you a very quick idea and introduction to our company, who we are and what we do. Annemin, are you with us?
I am with you guys. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, everybody. As Elena said, this is our second webinar for this year in our quarterly HR series, and we're very excited to have you here. And I think, judging to the responses we had to today, this is a very interesting topic on everybody's minds at the moment. I'm Annemin Victor. I'm the Services Director at P&H Solutions. We are a proud Sage Platinum partner supporting the full suite of Sage payroll and HR products. Our team specializes in the implementation of new software, project management across Africa and Middle East. In addition to the system support and implementations, we offer a wide variety and wide range of payroll outsourcing and HR services. Included in the HR services are organizational development. As you heard, Helena is an industrial psychologist, so organizational development, skills development, employment equity, industrial relations, performance management design, and many, many more. Anything that you can think of that's in the HR suite. So another warm welcome. Helena, you've already said welcome, but again, thank you very much to you and Linnell for all the preparation and all the work that went into this webinar. We're looking forward to all your insights this morning. So everybody, please sit back, enjoy the session, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of time at the end to ask your questions. So don't hesitate to engage right at the end. Thank you, Helena.
Thanks, Annemin. That was just a little bit about us as a company. Just before I introduce Linnell Chetty, who is our speaker for today, I'm just going to mention just a little bit about the webinars and what we are trying to do and what we've done so far. So this webinar series is proudly brought to you by P&H, the H of the P&H, the HR department. So we are actually going to be presenting a webinar series. It's free of charge. We're doing at least one topic every quarter. And the first topic that we had was on performance management. So it was all about performance, what is the kind of current landscape of performance, how it's changing in future. We looked also about performance management systems, of course, which is a very core part of what we do, change management, our approach to performance, and also looking at just kind of lessons that we've learned with our clients and what we are seeing in the market. So that session has already taken place. If you're interested in that, we do have the recording of that available. We are going to be launching our YouTube channel very soon in the next week or so, and we'll be uploading all of our previous webinar topics. The recordings will be uploading there, so you'll have it available if you want to go have a look. We also had a very interesting recent presentation on AI and how AI can really be harnessed by HR, and how AI is almost the key to really make the most of HR and placing HR not only kind of in a transactional capacity, but really how AI can transform your HR department to be more strategic. That was a very interesting topic. We had a panel of speakers. That recording will also be available on our YouTube page. The next webinar topic will be on employment relations and the proposed legislative changes there. So what we'll be discussing there is our thoughts and our take on the proposed legislation. We'll also be looking at typical IR cases and what we would recommend as a IR approach, and also looking at maybe some recent case law and interesting developments in that field. So that will also be communicating with you very soon. So you'll get an email from us afterwards with all of these different resources. So please engage with us, and please keep an eye out for future webinars that we will be presenting. So now, without further ado, let's go to Linnell. So Linnell Chetty on the call with me today. She is our transformation consultant and partner with P&H. She's a very experienced transformation consultant. She has over 11 years of experience in employment equity, skills, and BE consulting. Linnell, just on a personal level, in working with her, she's a very practical consultant, if I can call it that. She's very intent on giving her clients very practical solutions. She actually presented a skills training yesterday, which got amazing feedback from the client. She has a very good approach to compliance, not only focusing on the tick box exercise of compliance and seeing it as that, but really focusing on the heart of legislation and what the aim the legislation is trying to achieve. So Linnell, over to you. We look forward to hearing from you today.
Thank you so much, Elena, and thank you everyone for joining us during your lunch break. I hope you've got your coffee ready. We're not going to keep you guys too long, but from the responses we've got, you can see that there is mixed emotions in the room. I like that somebody does understand the rationale behind it, and we'll get into that. But more especially, I think there is some confusion, people not feeling too certain about how the systems will change, how the legislation will change, what do they need to do. And it is something that is a new legislation, so you have every right to feel overwhelmed right now. But as things go along, you have support available to you. And let's try and break it down together. So we're just going to go through an overview of the employment equity amendments. What does it, what's the implication for business, small and large alike? and some frequently asked questions. And hopefully in the frequently asked questions, you could get some answers, and yeah, we'll then address some of your questions at the end. So in terms of the amendments, I'm sure that those of you that have been complying, you know that the purpose of the Employment Equity Act was to redress the inequalities of the past. And we have been in a place of self-regulation. So from the start of the legislation being implemented, we as companies were allowed to pick our own targets, and then we went on for 30 odd years not to achieve those targets. So Department of Labor said enough is enough. We cannot allow self-regulation anymore, and therefore the amendments had to come into place. So the point of it was definitely to strengthen compliance due to the fact that in self-regulation, there wasn't any motivation for companies to actually propose higher targets or make any mark towards transformation. And now we're sort of being coerced and forced into it a little bit. So it was also to ensure that equitable representation across all the occupational levels. If you guys read the Commission for Employment Equity, when you're doing your numerical analysis every year, you will see that in the private sector, we have not even scratched the surface of reaching our transformation goals as a country. So in that sense, in order to ensure that there's equitable representation on all occupational levels, the sector targets that are now coming into play are targeting every occupational level. So previously we had EAP targets, which were definitely blanket targets and generic targets that were given to all industries and all sectors. And we would use the same sector targets, or sorry, the same EAP to try and drive transformation. That wasn't always successful because you will always have certain industries that are dominant by either male or female. For example, construction being dominant by males. And if you look at maybe the FP&M SETA or sector being dominated by females, that is something that is the reality of a business. We can't just change it and try to comply with the EAPs. So given that that had been a challenge for many years, department then said, let's look at each specific sector and try and align targets that make sense for that sector. It's also something that they have done in consultation with sectors and companies. So it's not as if they have just sucked those values. There has been consultation that has taken place. Another important reason was to reduce the compliance burden on smaller employers. We'll get into that in a minute. In terms of the overview of the amendments, like I mentioned, the key change is that a sector target is now set by the Minister of Employment and Labour, which means self-regulation falls away. We'll be given 5 years in which to achieve those targets. And if we obviously miss the first year targets, for example, it will roll over into the next year and into the next year. If by the time we reach our 5-year timeline and those targets have not been achieved, we will have to be able to give justifiable reasons as to why we haven't achieved these targets. The designated employer definition has been redefined, and that it applies to companies with 50 or more employees, regardless of turnover. So previous to this, if you had less than 50 employees, but your turnover was equal to or greater than that of the threshold as set out in the legislation, you would still need to comply. For example, transport was 30 million, and if you had 20 employees, but your turnover was 30 million, you'd have to comply with employment equity. What does that look like practically? Well, when you have 20 employees, how many positions can you open up? How many recruitments or promotions will you be able to do? Not that many. So therefore, they've put in or repealed the turnover threshold in order to accommodate smaller businesses and make sure that they don't have the burden of complying with employment equity at the moment. But it's important to watch your numbers. If you're closer to the 40s, if you are planning to grow, then bear in mind that the legislation will still apply at some point. Definitely another key change is the stricter compliance requirements and the enforcement for the employment equity plans and reports. So at the moment, I'm not sure how many of you on these calls have ever gone through an inspection from Department of Labor. Depending on the inspector that you get, it can go either way. So some of them are quite strict, and they also allowed for variation amongst submissions. But at the moment, when the legislation changes, all inspectors are actually being trained on a uniform type of enforcement. And I think we can assume that it'll be a lot stricter than it has been in the past. There's a change in consultation requirements. Just regarding that change, if you've got a representative union in your company, it actually has proposed and gazetted that you only need to now consult with the trade union. So I'm sure for those guys that will be facing that requirement, they are going to have quite a few thoughts about it. In terms of disabled people, or the definition for people with disabilities, that has also been expanded to include intellectual, mental, and sensory impairments. Remember, any disability that we obviously plan to declare needs to be diagnosed by a medical practitioner. So we can't just assume or self-diagnose. It has to be declared and then also backed up by the relevant evidence. In terms of the compliance certificate implementation, this is quite a big one as well, especially for our clients who do a lot of work with government and apply for tenders. The compliance certificate is important because it's now going to carry the same weighting as letter of good standing. Okay, what are the implications for business? Well, on the broader scope of things, sectoral targets adds a lot of complexity to the already existing employment equity requirements. I'm not sure if any of you guys have been through the consultation process with Department of Labor and their roadshows for the different sectors and determining the targets. We can chat about it at the end of the session. How did you feel about it when you saw the targets? Do you think it's better than complying to the EAP, or do you feel sectoral targets are worse off? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But it does make it a little bit more complex in that you now have to carry out the sectoral target across all occupational levels. Stricter compliance standards, well, of course, there have always been fines applicable to non-compliance, but especially for, like I mentioned, our clients and companies that survive on tenders or actively trade based on work that they receive from tenders with the government, the compliance certificate is something that's going to be quite important to them. And it isn't something that you will be able to continuously apply for tenders without. So it's quite important that if you are in that type of environment that you have to make sure you comply with employment equity in order to receive the compliance certificate. In terms of the risk of enforcement, like I mentioned, inspectors will now audit and issue compliance orders based on the new assessment criteria, and that is compliance with your sectoral targets. So that makes it a lot easier for you to be fined if you're not in a place of compliance. And sector-specific insights and tools will be needed in order for us to be able to achieve those targets, or to be able to put forward our deviations as to why we haven't achieved these certain targets. So that's going to be quite important to watch over those targets quite closely, ensure that we have our justifiable reasons, or monitor the deviations, especially if you are not the sole person responsible for recruitment or for making those hiring mandates. It's very important that our teams within the businesses that have a hiring mandate are also aware of the implications when it comes to employment equity. And then the impact on small businesses, I think this is one of the more positive changes that we're seeing. Like I mentioned, they no longer qualify as designated employers. They also won't be able to voluntarily comply. So prior to this, if a company didn't meet the turnover threshold or the number of employees, but still wanted to create a positive impact within their business, they would voluntarily comply with employment equity. Now this is not an option. So when you are less than 50 employees, you're automatically not going to be able to log into the system and submit any reports. We do still have clients that want to continue keeping up the morale of the employees and keeping an employment equity committee in place. They can certainly do so, continuously have meetings. Remember, you can still consult on the fact that unfair discrimination is not allowed in any business, and use that as a forum to build rapport with your employees. However, you won't need to now report about it. In terms of the compliance certificate, this is why we don't want them to deregister from the system either, because they will still require a compliance certificate. It will just be easier for them in terms of not having to meet the compliance requirements for employment equity. But we still need to make sure that they have no finding in the last year at the labor court for unfair discrimination. And secondly, they need to be paying their employees in line with the Minimum Wage Act. So that's going to be every year. Every year when the minimum wage changes, we need to make sure that we're in line with minimum wage in order for us to obtain the compliance certificate. Some frequently asked questions, and these were questions that came up in the various consultations from companies who attended as well. And basically, hopefully these answers can settle some of your questions, but if not, we will have questions in a short while. So can small businesses still voluntarily comply? The answer is no. We've already dealt with that. The company needs to monitor their staffing levels. Like I mentioned, if you're closer to the 40s, 45 employees, etc., it's important to monitor it, because as soon as you hit the 50 mark, you're supposed to be complying with employment equity. For companies that will be affected by this and you're worried about your triple BE scoring, what's going to happen? Well, basically, if you're no longer designated, then you just need to prove it to the verification agency. When you show them your payroll reports, they will confirm the numbers don't meet more than 50 employees, and they will not be expecting employment equity reports as evidence from you. In terms of should the non-designated employer deregister? No, because you will need to apply for your compliance certificate if necessary, and so you shouldn't have to deregister from the system. The platform that is, we've been told that is going to be updated will automatically move you to another window that doesn't require compliance. So your profile will still exist, but you will no longer be required to submit reports. Okay, and then remember our definition of people with disabilities has now changed. And so we're going to have to look at a new EA1. And EA1 is a declaration form where employees usually have to declare their race, their gender, and whether they have a disability or not. This is important. So we're going to have to do an awareness session with our employees so they understand the new definition. It could be that they have an intellectual disability and they've never considered it a disability before, but now they can come forward and declare that. What prevents an employer from obtaining a compliance certificate? Like I mentioned, if you don't achieve your annual targets without justification. So that's the important part there, without justification. If there's non-payment of the national minimum wage, if we fail to submit our annual employment equity reports, and if there's any guilty verdict for discrimination or harassment that is found at the labor court, then you're going to not be able to get that certificate of compliance. What changes are made to the definition of a disabled person? Like I mentioned at the top, inclusion of intellectual, mental, and sensory impairments that prejudice employment progression. So that's also important. It needs to prejudice employment progression. If there is an intellectual or mental and sensory impairment that doesn't affect a person's progression within employment, then there's no need for them to declare it. Employers need to update their HR systems and policies accordingly so that we accommodate for the new expansion of the definition. In terms of how will the ministerial targets be implemented, the targets will be published in March for 18 sectors. For those of you who have been part of the consultation process, there are draft targets out. We have been waiting for the regulations to be communicated to us during March. March has now passed. We still have not received it, but we're hoping and holding on for April so that companies have sufficient time to start putting together their new plans and taking into consideration the targets before we're going to do our new reporting on all of these changes on the 1st of September. What happens if the targets are not met? Well, employers must provide justifiable reasons. Examples of their justifiable reasons, the good thing is that it has been an expanded list. So previously it didn't take into consideration the reality of the situations we face now. So I think it's important that we look through the justifiable reasons to ensure that whatever reason we didn't meet the target actually closely lines up to a justifiable reason that will be accepted, which is no opportunities, skill shortages, disruptions, etc. Employers will need to ensure that they maintain comprehensive records for the reasons of deviating from their plans. And if you guys would like to know further about this, we can always set up a session, but it's quite important that we keep records as and when it happens. When you get inspected, you're not going to remember why you recruited outside your target 2 years ago. So it's important that as and when recruitments happen or promotions happen that are outside of the targets, that we have some sort of record kept for the deviation from the EE targets. How is the sector classification determined? Well, the employer needs to determine which is their main sector based on their business operations and focus. Sometimes a company can have multiple parts of the business or facets of the business that can fall into different sectors. Our rule of thumb is that we'll look at where the majority of the revenue comes from, and that's how we pick the major sector and comply with those sector targets. So just in terms of a time frame, our legislation was gazetted obviously in January, and so it's now live. However, we haven't received those regulations yet. So in terms of the record for discrimination, though, in order to get a compliance certificate, we will be looking at from the 1st of January. So it's important that even though we haven't received the regulation setting out the targets or confirming that the targets are now applicable, we still need to keep a clean record of unfair discrimination cases or harassment. In terms of February, we then had our sectoral consultations across the 18 sectors, looking at draft targets, for example, and I hope a lot of you guys have joined these sessions. It's very difficult to have any change or get your say in if you don't join the consultation. So we've attended on behalf of our clients and put their feedback forward. And hopefully a lot of you guys attended as well and were able to voice your opinions. It's going to be difficult once those sectoral targets pass to then complain about it or have any changes done. It should have happened in those consultations in February. Again, in March, we were looking forward to those updated regulations and waiting for it to be gazetted. We had been given a timeline of March. However, it's now passed and we haven't received it yet. We're hoping it'll hold on for April. And then from April to August, we should be in our preparation phase where we look at the new sector targets, put that forward into our new plans, look at our organizational culture and transformation development, conduct our gap analysis and training our employment equity committees, even though they have been trained, just to make them aware of the amendments, the changes to definitions, etc. And establish robust tracking and compliance systems. Again, later on in this presentation, Elena will just show you how Sage can help with the tracking of the compliance through their equity module. And then revising of the EE plan in line with the new sectoral target. So every company in South Africa that needs to be complying is going to start from scratch, and we're all going to align to the same reporting period, which will be the 1st of September. So it doesn't matter what plan you have in place and how closely aligned it looks to the sectoral targets. Once the sectoral target is gazetted, we then need to revise the plan and restart the plan. September will be the first reporting period where we will report under the new framework. So it's important that we use the time we have now to do upskilling when it comes to our committees, make sure that they are accurately represented and sufficiently represented, get their training done. We can do all of the things that we need to do before looking at the targets that are gazetted as we wait for them. If we don't and we just carry on holding on until the gazette comes out, we could end up having very little time and having to combine a lot of the sessions with the staff. So I think it's best to get the training done, make sure they are aware of the amendments, and look at the existing targets that we have. We shouldn't just be continuing without any employment equity plan in place. I think they made it quite clear if your plan is ended, there needs to be a plan in place under the old framework, which will then be revised when it comes to the new framework. But if you've got an existing plan, let's say, for example, it ends in 2026, you can keep following that plan, make sure you're still working towards your employment equity goals while we are waiting for the new sectoral targets to be gazetted. Okay, and that's it from an equity perspective. Just a reminder in terms of our skills development, it is the month of submissions for the WSP ATR across all of the different SETAs. The deadline is the 30th of April. If you are unaware of whether you should be submitting or not, remember all companies with an annual payroll of 500,000 Rand or more, they pay a 1% skills development levy. And if you would like to claim that back, your 20% mandatory grant, you would be submitting a WSP ATR. So that looks at something successfully trained and a planned train every year. If you are applying for discretionary grants, there's another 49.5% left that you can apply for, and these are for pivotal programs, for accredited programs. They are programs that can lead to a qualification or part of a qualification. If you guys are interested, you still have time. Today is only the 11th, so you've got a few days left to put together your skill submission and submit it. Then you are liable to get your rebate back, and training doesn't have to be out of pocket anymore. So if you do need help with WSP ATR or these submissions, you're welcome to reach out to us at PNH Solutions. I've told you about the compliance part of things and consulting part of things, but it would be nice to look at how the system can help you guys from a Sage perspective and the HR module. So Helena, if you're still there, maybe you can just jump in and talk the guys through what the system can do.
Sure. Thanks, Lanelle. Yeah, I think some of our delegates today might be, interested to hear about how a software like Sage can help them with their compliance, as you mentioned. I think the main benefit when it comes to system and assisting with compliance is, of course, it helps you so much in the line of record keeping. So here we have various HR modules available, but for today, I'm just going to be focusing specifically on equity and skills. So from an equity point of view, of course, there we keep track of things like occupational levels, our equity plan. What is very nice about Sage is that it can help you, especially with equity, where we, of course, have to consider, our history. It helps you to automate the maintenance of that history to a large extent. So, for example, you can link your occupational levels up to job titles, and as you maintain your payroll, the occupational levels, equity type of employment, all those equity related fields are automatically maintained. Promotions are automatically flagged. Recruitment, of course, is flagged as you onboard staff. Terminations are flagged as you offboard your staff members. And I think that's what it boils down to, is that you have much more accurate records, and it's very easy to monitor your company's progress towards meeting those numerical goals and targets. Just by the way, Linnell mentioned about the equity plan and how that will need to be changed. It's very easy to change an equity plan on Sage. But the nice thing about it is, even though we are updating your plan, your history still remains intact. And we can do operational equity reports, not just on those times where your equity committee meets and where you actually need to submit your reports, but you can track it on a much more frequent basis. So those reports are much more accessible to you. On the skill side, again, record keeping, there we look at things, of course, like OFO codes, highest qualifications. Anytime you have access to ESS on Sage, it's so nice because you can really use that as a tool for data collection. So you can, for example, set up a questionnaire to ask your staff members, what is your highest qualification? Attach the document for me. So it becomes a lot easier to gather that information and keep record. What's also quite nice about the skills module specifically is it allows you to really have almost the life cycle of that skills transaction. So your end users, like your employees or managers, can apply to attend certain trainings offered by your company. That request can go through an approval process. Once it's approved, and if it has been approved, of course, it becomes a planned training. And from there, when it's completed, it becomes an actual training. From there, if it's an actual training, you can even flag the same training transaction to be recorded on the skills development section of your equity report. So it's a very nice integrated system that allows you to, it's one transaction, but it's very easy then to keep record and keep track and see how it integrates with your different modules. I've already mentioned ESS and the benefit of having that approval process. What some clients do is that they will use that function of applying for training via an ESS for a needs analysis, like Linnell mentioned. So you can see what type of needs there are in terms of training needs from different departments, managers, end users. And that really allows you to see, when you are working on your planned training, then you can really use that as a basis. The other nice thing about the skills module, of course, is you're able to load training transactions in bulk. So instead of keeping track of attended trainings via different Excel sheets and training registers, it's very easy to pre-populate a training catalog where you can pre-populate what is the training cost, who is our typical provider, who is our typical facilitator. So all those types of things, depending on how detailed you want to do it, you can go and just simply load it against the relevant users, put in the dates, put in the times, and then, of course, also being a system, it allows for very detailed record keeping of training cost, not only from a skills perspective, where we look at direct cost or the invoice cost for the training itself, but also looking at indirect costs as it relates to maybe BEE submissions of things like flights, accommodations, and what is it costing to actually take someone off, for example, a production floor. If we convert their rate per hour on the payroll and we say, okay, we're training them for 4 hours, what is the cost of actually taking someone off the production floor, taking them and putting them in a training situation? The last idea that I just want to mention is that how the system integrates. And here specifically, keeping performance in mind, is you have a function on Sage called development plans, which is, if you think of a personal development plan or IDP, that allows you to actually link performance items to development plans. So you can have an employee complete a performance review. Coming straight off of that review, they can go and log developmental items against KPIs or competencies or whatever you rate on. Perhaps where they were scored a bit lower, they can go log training, qualifications, mentorship, any sort of developmental initiative. They can log against those items. And if you select something like training or qualifications, it integrates with your skills module. So that's just a little bit on the system and compliance. If we just have a look at how we as P&H can assist you, as Linnell presented, she did mention a lot of these service offerings. These are not our only service offerings, but we just wanted to give you an idea of how we can support you in the process over and above, of course, the webinar. So Linnell, on the transformation side, do you want to just maybe quickly comment on equity, skills, and BE consulting and what that involves?
Definitely. So when it comes to consulting, especially with employment equity, we plan to assist you with the full compliance, so hand-holding throughout the entire process, helping you set up a committee that is sufficiently representative of your workforce, helping them to be trained so they understand employment equity and what it's about, helping through the consultation in terms of even chairing those committee meetings, guiding you to keep on topic, helping you to put together your targets and your goals for the employment equity plan, and monitoring that employment equity plan throughout the year as well. And the final step, which is reporting to the Department of Labor. All of those things are covered within the employment equity consulting. With skills development consulting, like we said, now we're in our reporting period for skills development, which means helping to put together the needs analysis, whether you decide to do it per department or, like we said, in MS forms or a form through Sage to ask your employees what training they feel they could benefit from in order to do their jobs better. We can collate the information and help to put together a WSP as well as your ATR, what you've actually trained. We chair the committee meetings if you've got more than 50 employees, and we help you with the actual capture of the skills development report, WSP, and the ATR on the relevant system. So irrespective of which CETA you belong to, we can assist with the actual submission. And not to forget discretionary grants. If it is an application that happens with your WSP, we can look at submitting that for you. Excuse me. Sorry. And from a BE perspective, it's also consulting, helping you to put together your strategy.
Linnell, and you have a free resource also here, I believe, that you want to offer to our delegates today.
Yes, so as a thank you for everyone that's attending, we would like to offer you guys a complimentary compliance check, irrespective of whether it's equity or skills related or even BE related. You guys are welcome to set up a quick 30-minute session and we can go through the consulting together. And from a systems perspective, Helena, I'm sure you have an offer as well.
Yes, so on the system side of things, of course, we have different HR modules available. Today, I'm just touching briefly on equity and skills. So for equity and skills, if you'd like to learn more and see a bit more of the system, you can request a demo. In the corner of the slide there, we have a QR code with the contact details of Tarsha van Heerden. Tarsha van Heerden is on our sales side, and she can help you set up a demo so that you can see sample reports, have a demo of the system, and also discuss your needs and whether the system, not whether, actually how the system can accommodate your needs. So yeah, I think that's basically what we wanted to cover in terms of our content, Linnell. So just to maybe open up the floor, any questions from our delegates today, you are more than welcome to use the chat or the Q&A function on the webinar. You can also raise your hand and we can unmute you if you would like to ask your question in that way. So maybe, Linnell, I think while everyone is just maybe typing out their questions, if we do have some questions, can I maybe open up the floor with a question that I had in mind? So if I was now here today attending this webinar, we saw in the beginning that, many of us still might be feeling a bit unprepared and a bit unsure when it comes to these legislative changes. If I wanted to know more and really go and do my research and read up on these changes, where can I go to get information? Any maybe specific documents that I must have a look at, or where can I access these resources?
Okay, that's a great question, Helena. So everything related to employment equity is very transparent because it comes from the Department of Labor. If you haven't had the chance to attend one of the workshops regarding these changes or the Employment Equity Roadshow, you're welcome to just pop into the Department of Labor website. They usually do have information regarding the changes, and you can always download the legislation. If there is too much of reading, if you're going to go on and get the legislation downloaded, you're also welcome to reach out to us and we can do a quick summary with you guys as well.
Great. Thanks, Tanya, for your comment in the chat. Linnell, Tanya is just saying thank you. It was nice to have you join, Tanya. So any other questions, you're welcome to pop in the chat. I think that brings our session to an end. We'll be staying on the call for a few minutes for just any questions. Just as a reminder, the session was recorded, of course. We will be sharing the session recording with you, and we'll share a link after we've finalized the presentation. We'll also be sharing the slides with you. Linnell has there put up our contact details for you. You're welcome to contact myself or Linnell. Liesel, thank you. Liesel says it was a great session. Thanks to everyone. Thanks, Linnell. Seemed like Tanya and Liesel enjoyed the session. So yeah, you're welcome to contact us. We'll be making this slide and recording available to you, and please reach out to us for your complimentary risk assessment to identify areas in your business where you might be need to give some attention in terms of equity compliance, and to give you a good starting point of what to focus on. So Linnell will be facilitating that. And then yeah, we will also be sharing our YouTube channel with you with previous recordings of webinars, future recordings. Please look out for our IR webinar coming up in future. We have some hands. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, we look forward to engaging with you in future again. So yeah, any questions, please pop in the chat. We will be hanging around for a few more minutes just to give you opportunity to engage with Linnell. Stefani, sorry, not Stefani. Stefani says, very informative session. Thank you so much. And now some good feedback to you. Thanks so much, everyone. Lianai also says thank you. Selena says thank you for the session. Thanks, everyone.
Well, if you guys come up with questions after the session, you're always welcome to set up a session with us.
Of course, of course. Okay, so just hanging around for a few more minutes. We do still have some delegates on the call. Just want to see if there's a question. Sean, nice to see you. Sean says thank you. Enjoy the weekend. Okay, so Linnell, it looks like I think everyone is just dropping off. I think we can end the call. Thank you so much, Linnell.
There's no
I'll catch up
now.
with you afterwards.
Thank you, guys. Take
Thanks,
care.
Bye,
Selena.
everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
Linnell. Bye-bye.